Okay, we're going to travel way back, like to the 13th century, to meet this woman whose voice feels, I don't know, just incredibly modern. She was a mystic, a poet, and honestly, a total rebel. She had these ideas about divine love that pretty much challenged the entire power structure of her time. And her name? Mechthild of Magdeburg.
Yeah, a living stream of love. I mean, wow. Those are her actual words, and they just cut right to the heart of her vision, don't they? So, who was this woman? Who would dare to talk about God with that kind of intimacy back then? And maybe the bigger question is, how is it possible that after 800 years, her ideas still feel so revolutionary? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into.
You know, to really get Mechthild, you have to start with this incredibly brave choice she made. See, she didn't just follow the script that was written for women in her time. No way. She basically ripped it up and forged her own path. And it was all built on this idea of radical spiritual freedom. So let's put some dates to this. She was born into a noble family in Germany, and apparently she had these really powerful spiritual visions, even as a kid. Then around age 23, she makes this huge, life-changing decision. That's what really sets her on the path to writing her masterpiece, The Flowing Light of the Godhead. And then, much later, in her final years, she finds a home in a convent.
Okay, so what was that big decision? She decided to become a Beguine. And you have to understand, this was basically her ticket to independence. Being a Beguine meant she could dedicate her whole life to God, but, and this is the key part, without being trapped in the super rigid, male-dominated hierarchy of the church. It gave her the freedom to think for herself, to write, and to connect with the divine entirely on her own terms. A total game changer.
And when you put her path side by side with the official church path, man, the contrast is just staggering, right? The church used Latin. That was the language of the educated elite. She wrote in everyday German, so anyone could read it. The church was all about rigid hierarchy. She was all about a direct personal experience of God. Look, this wasn't just a slightly different option. This was an act of rebellion.
So, okay, she's got this spiritual freedom. How did that actually show up in her work? To see that, we've got to dive into her masterpiece, The Flowing Light of the Godhead. This is where you find the revolutionary visions that, well, inspired a lot of people, but also got her into a lot of trouble.
Her ideas were so bold, and there were so many layers to them. For her, God wasn't some distant king on a throne. Nope. God was an intimate, flowing stream of love. She taught that the whole point for the soul was to achieve this complete union with the divine. And get this, she didn't see suffering as some kind of punishment. For her, it was a path to getting wiser. And on top of all that, she was absolutely fearless about calling out corruption when she saw it.
And the way she talked about it, it was this incredibly poetic, almost romantic language. Think about that for a second. The relationship with God wasn't supposed to be about fear. It was supposed to be about deep, passionate love. She was basically telling every single person, it didn't matter if you were a peasant or a prince, that this incredible, profound intimacy was available to you.
And this wasn't just some lofty, abstract idea for her. Not at all. She was a really sharp social critic. She basically argued that real holiness, true goodness, wasn't found in having a ton of money or power or a fancy title. It was found in simple acts of love and humility and service. And, as you can probably imagine, that did not go over well with some of the powerful church leaders.
Which brings us to a really crucial question, right? How on earth did she get away with this? We're talking about the 1200s, a time when women's voices were just silenced. So how could she challenge the most powerful institution in the known world and, survive to tell the tale?
Well, her strategy was as simple as it was radical. She just bypassed Latin altogether. By ignoring the language of the powerful and writing in the language of the people, she went directly to her audience. She was handing the keys to ordinary folks, especially women, letting them access divine truth for themselves. No gatekeepers. Completely outside the church's control. Just brilliant.
So, that's the history. But why does any of this matter now? Why are we talking about a mystic from 800 years ago today? What could she possibly have to say to our modern, kind of chaotic world? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. Her message is just, it's timeless. I mean, think about it. Our world feels so divided, and she's calling us back to love as the thing that can unite us. We're living in an age where a lot of us are skeptical of big institutions, and she champions the power of direct personal experience. She gives us a way to find meaning in our own pain,
And maybe most importantly, she inspires us to speak our truth even when it's scary.
And that brings us back to her core idea, that flowing light. It's not just a pretty phrase, it's an invitation. She's basically asking us to see that the sacred, the divine, whatever you want to call it, it isn't locked away in dusty old books or giant stone cathedrals. It's a living, breathing presence that flows through everything and through every single one of us, right here, right now.
So we're left with this final thought, and it really feels like a direct message from Mechthild herself, reaching across the centuries. Her work isn't just some historical document to be studied, it's a living invitation. And the question she leaves us with, 800 years later, is a really personal one. Are you willing to look within and experience that divine flow in your own life?